Shubhodayam. Welcome you all for this Maitri Milan session. The series of Karma Yoga Shloka Sangraha. Let's look at the 10th and 11th shlokas today. Unusual way Krishna brings about a point there. He says, Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayopyatra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshami yajnatva mokshase shubhat. Kim karma, kim akarma. What is action? What is non-action? Kim karma, kim akarma. Kavayopyatra mohitaha. Kavihi. Even the people who are wise, people who are intelligent, knowledgeable, they even get confused about these things. They don't have clarity about that. They have haziness about that. Mohitaha. They are in cloud. Tatte karma pravakshami yajnatva mokshase shubhat. I'm going to give you the details of that. That's what Krishna gives in this particular shloka. It looks very strange because what is the difficulty in finding out what is activity and what is non-activity? In fact, an ordinary, simple human being can understand that. Anybody can very clearly see that. An activity one can see. An activity not being there one can see. You can do an activity, you don't do an activity. Somebody is doing an activity, somebody is not doing an activity. These are the things which so easily can be seen. Why Krishna says that it is very difficult? Even the intelligent people cannot find out. That means to say that what you see, the karma, akarma, it is just only at the surface level. And then the karma, the origin of karma, the origin of akarma seem to be somewhere deep hidden underneath. So that need to be clarified so that the karma can become karma yoga. Let us try to understand why does he say that kim karma, what is activity? It is difficult to understand. How can it be difficult? Because we see activity happening, we do the activity. Many times we do the activity. Every time that we are doing an activity, we are very clear. But then, if you closely watch, all our activities, they are not just an activity like somebody praises me and I'm happy. Somebody blames me, somebody makes fun of me, I'm angry. When somebody praises, I become happy. Is it a karma of being happy? Or somebody blames me something, somebody accuses me for something, I become angry. Is that the karma that we see? Krishna says that this is not the karma. Basically, it is not something which is like an activity which is coming out of you. But basically what is happening is that you are reacting to something which is there outside. And this reaction we call it as activity. But it is not really activity. If you go very closely to observe it, it is nothing but reactivity. Somebody says something that when activity comes without your knowledge, prompted by the world outside, how can you claim to be the activity belongs to you? It belongs to somebody else. That means to say, in that activity that you have in the form of either praise or blame, the anger or the happiness, both these things depend, the key for that is with somebody else. It's like the way that you switch on the light or switch off the light is on and light is off. Just because that you put the switch light on, that the light glows, the light starts thinking that look, I am glowing. You are not actually glowing, it is the switch somewhere else and it is under the control of the switch. It is mechanical. The same way that we also become mechanical. It is not that we are doing an activity, but we are prompted by somebody else to do that activity. We are only like an instrument and somebody is holding the key. This is how basically all our activities are. 99% of all activities that you think of that you are doing, it is not that you are doing, but it is you are made to do it. Are you angry just because by you wanted to be angry? Or you were angry because somebody else did something? The cause is somewhere else. The cause is in your hands. And not only that, we take pride in that, saying that, or we claim innocence about that also, saying that, look, I wouldn't have been angry because of him, I became angry. I scolded him because he did something. That means to say, we always find a cause outside of us, and then we become responsible to that. And that response, that what we call it as we are doing. It's not that you are doing. The call is there from outside and then you do it. Now, why do we respond to the call that is there coming from outside? Basically, if you closely watch, that's how that we are developed. In fact, every child looks at the world outside and responds to the world. And we teach the child to respond like that. Like that, you ask the child, what's your name? And the child gives the name. And then if the child doesn't give name, then the parents prompt the child, come on, you tell your name. That means to say you should respond. Somebody says something, that you should respond. He says good morning, you have to return good morning. He says namaste, you have to return namaste. We are trying to teach the child to respond to the world outside, react to the world outside. This has been that our whole learning process has taken place. The whole growth has taken place like that. It's only just respond to the world outside. Like my little niece, when she was a small little girl, she was in the school. She used to go to the school and the teachers gave her the prompt that whenever the children go to the school, all the madams were there, the teachers were there, then they would say good morning miss, and the teacher would respond saying that God bless you. So you teach the child that the moment you see the miss, you say good morning miss, and as a prompt reply comes from the teacher saying God bless you. One day, this niece, my little niece mother, she was supposed to be school inspector. She happened to go to the school. And then this little girl was following her mother. Both of them were walking. Now, for the teachers who were there in that school, that the mother of this particular girl is the boss. So naturally, when this lady went there, then the teachers greeted her saying that good morning miss. And then now, the mother did not reply. The child started saying God bless you. He said, no, you are not supposed to say. That means you are learned, you are taught to respond to that. So basically, when you look at it, the whole thing is nothing but that you start responding. You look at somebody's face, then you smile. That's how that you are asked to respond. That means to say, even a simple act like smile is not what you are doing, but you are responding to the world outside. Now, even in that response also, that there are two different ways that are there. That's something which the other day we had discussed one time. That is, I can react violently or I can respond not violently. So both these things are there. In fact, this is how basically, even the karma that you are not doing also has two different levels. One is a level where you are reacting, and this reaction also again can be in two ways. One is that you react outside or you do not react outside, but then you react inside. It is good to react outside, at least so that you don't damage yourself. But if you do not give a vent to the reaction that comes from outside, in the form of reacting to the outside, you stomach it, then this reaction is not going to leave alone. It is going to damage you. So that's why it is better to respond to the outside, react outside vehemently rather than stomaching it, holding it. In fact, if people who are tennis lovers, they would know there was an earlier tennis, now he has retired, now he became a commentator, and he is John McEnroe. And the John McEnroe is very well known because that he reacts to in the field in such a way, many times it is very humorous. And then people would enjoy. But in the process that he would have been slapped several times with the fine. He said, okay, it doesn't matter. Sometimes, in fact, in the tennis records, that somebody who has paid the maximum amount of fine in the tennis field is McEnroe. One day it so happened Wimbledon matches going on and McEnroe was the commentator, and suddenly Bill Clinton happened to be there. And then he was brought to the commentator box and he was asked, an interview was being done. And then at that time, Bill Clinton asked McEnroe, saying that, look, I'm a tennis fan all the time. I've been watching the tennis. And then particularly, you are one of my great heroes because your tennis game is something which is extraordinary. And then, like the way later on, Pete Sampras was there, and now the Roger Federer, all these people. But then I always wanted to ask one question. He said, what is that? Why do you show all those tantrums in the field? Why do you get shout? Why do you make all this drama in the field? Why don't you keep quiet? McEnroe said, look, I develop anger, but if I don't show there, I would unnecessarily be penting up inside me, and that would have damaged my nerves. And now because I shout, only thing is that I pay some fine, but more important thing is I'm really healthy. That means to say, there is one way to react, that's what you show it outside. Another way to react is to stomach inside. Don't react at all, just respond to it, and even that's also not really karma, but that's also something that is prompted by outside. It is outside which has the key, and then you respond. Like somebody says something, then you cry. Somebody says something, that you laugh. It's all basically that you are not the control of yourself, but the world outside is controlling you. In Bangalore is a very beautiful place, particularly 30 years ago. Not this traffic was there, IT was not there. It was really like a garden city, full of lakes and all that. Particularly, Jayanagar is a very beautiful extension. And then there were two houses that were there. And basically, Bangalore and Jayanagar is a place where people retired also, they live happily, and working also, they are happy because that there are so many companies that are there, HAL, BEL, etc., all those things, that the father was working in some company, he retired, and then his son is now working. So they are in a combined family, the father, mother, and the son, and they are all living together. And the father's name is Subramaniam. Subramaniam is a very common name, anyway. And then retire and gets up early in the morning at 5 o'clock, and then everybody is sleeping. You cannot sleep at the old age more than after 5 o'clock, so you wake up and then have your nice wonderful coffee. Bangalore offers very good coffee also. And then you take that coffee and come out of the house into the garden. Every house used to have a nice little garden, and then do the garden work, waiting for the newspaper to come. And then next door also there is another old man. He is also Subramaniam, and he also is retired from a government company. He also had his morning coffee and came out in the garden. He didn't want to disturb the people at the house. So this is a routine. And then waiting for the newspaper to come. And then both of them got the daily newspaper, Hindu. Hindu is very great newspaper because it is voluminous. Morning to evening you can keep reading it. So both of them got Hindu, and then you opened the Hindu papers, and this fellow said, oh my God, another train accident. And immediately that other Subramaniam who is next to him, he put his head into this newspaper. He also has the same newspaper. Said, where is the train accident? So, and then, oh my God, 20 people died, 30 people died. This was conversation going on, which is a routine thing. Suddenly, the telegram fellow comes, those days 30, 40 years ago, only telegram used to be the means of communication, immediate. So he comes on the bicycle and then stopped the bicycle, took out the telegram from his pocket and says, looks at the name and said, Subramaniam has the telegram. And both of them, they have raised their hands. And then now he had a hard time to find out which Subramaniam it is, because the print is not very clear. Then he looked at it and said, it is M.N. Subramaniam. Immediately one Subramaniam, he raised his hand, and the other Subramaniam picked up the telegram, opened it, because telegram means bad news and people cannot be stable. So naturally that other person, he looked at the telegram and said, your aunt died in Coimbatore. Immediately the Subramaniam became full of tears, emotions, raptures, and said, oh my God, without that aunt, how can I survive? When I was going to primary school, she used to prepare my dress ready. And this fellow retired 20 years ago. And then he still thinks about his primary school and that aunt who helped him in that and all that. Oh my God, without that aunt, how can I live? She left me alone. All these things. And then this Subramaniam is trying to console him, saying that, look, no, take it easy. One day or the other, everybody has to die. And she also must have lived a wonderful life. She died, and this way it is going on. The more and more that you console, the more and more that fellow sobs. And then it was continuing like that, half an hour. Nobody in the house knows about it. Meanwhile, the telegram fellow comes back from the office. Sir, I went back to the office, checked the records, and then I found it is not M.N. Subramaniam, but the telegram belongs to N.M. Subramaniam. Immediately the other Subramaniam, he grabbed the telegram and remembered his aunt. He said, oh my aunt, when I was in my mother's place and then she used to come there and all that, he remembered that aunt. And without you, how can I live? And you left me alone. And now this other Subramaniam says, take it easy. Everybody has to die one day or the other. You see, this is what? You are continuously responding to the situation outside. You are reacting to the situation. This is not karma. Can you do it by yourself? Don't be like a mechanical thing that a situation comes, you do it. This Leo Tolstoy, in his book, he has written very beautifully that a wealthy lady came to the theater, and then there was a theater that is going, the drama that is going on, and she's so emotional that when the sad situation comes, she would wipe her tears, she would blow her nose and all that, and there is a servant of hers, she is standing by her side, and then giving her one fresh kerchief after the other. By the time the drama would finish, she would at least use something like 10 kerchiefs because she is so emotional on one side. But on the outside, that she would have come by the cart, the horse-drawn cart those days, and then the driver who used to bring that horse cart, he would be sitting there in that cart waiting for whenever she would come out immediately to take her. And then, but it was so cold and snowing, and this horseman who would sit there would die because of the cold, and by the time she would come out, they remove that person, put another person. That means to say, on one side she has tremendous emotions, on the other side she is such a bad lady, she has no emotions at all. Look at the whole thing. That means to say, you are mechanical, you are not really emotional deep inside. There is nothing that you are doing, but basically you are being driven by the world outside. In fact, all that story, it is Tolstoy tells about his own biography. It is like that. So this is essentially what happens. We are responding, reacting to the world outside. We are not doing an activity. So karma we think that we are doing, but 99.9% of the times we are not doing the work. We are only responding to the world outside because that's how that we have been trained. And that's how basically we have grown. We are compelled to do that. A spirituality is where you do the activity. It is like the way the flower flowers. It's like the way when the flower flowers, it spreads the fragrance. When the way that the plant gives the fruit, it is not because of any response to the world outside, not for any reason or something like that. It is a plant so that it gives the fruit. It's a very natural, spontaneous way of manifestation of your activity. That's what is called as karma. So that's why it is so deep. Every time that you do an activity, you see whether your activity is prompted by something or the other. In fact, we all look for what is the cause for that. Because we do not do any activity. Any activity that we say, we always attribute to because. Because this happened, so I do it. As if I am not responsible for that. As if this is something which is extraordinary. I got angry because somebody said something. As if I am not responsible for that. So, this is how basically we become very defensive in all our activities that we do. Look at a child. The child just throws the hands and legs freely. There is no question of because on that. The child has legs and hands, does it. Child walks just because walking say. The activity of the child is a true activity. It is the karma. This is where basically the karma is something which comes from the deep within. It is the deep inside soul, the consciousness, which flowers itself into the activity. That's what is karma. If you are really doing karma, that karma does not bind you. But our karma binds us because that all our karma that we do is born out of a response or the reaction to the world outside. A response may be slightly better, reaction is all the way bad. But both these things are not truly the karma. The same way about akarma also Krishna says that kim karma, kim akarma. Even akarma is not something that you really do know fully about. What is that akarma that we do not know? In fact, if I don't do an activity, is it not akarma? No, it is not like that. Many times the activity that you are not doing is also nothing but escaping from the activity. That's what is the non-activity way that you are. It is running away from the activity, not really non-activity. There is a lot of difference between these two. Laziness is appears to be non-activity, but it can be mistaken. Very often, that's where people say that if I don't do an activity, then how can the work be done? Basically, that you are looking at the non-activity in the form of laziness. Laziness is not the non-activity, because when Krishna talks about akarma, this akarma is not taking away the freedom. Actually, when you grow into the karma and akarma, like the way that you should have a freedom to do an activity which is supposed to be karma, the same way a freedom to not to do the activity also should be the way that the spiritual journey towards akarma. Freedom to not to do an activity is the journey towards spirituality. Why? Because karma is also there at the other side of it. When do you call it as freedom? When both the sides are there, then you call it as freedom. If you say that you have a total freedom to tell only the truth, then where is the question of freedom? The freedom is when you can tell a lie, you can also tell a truth, then you take towards the truth. That's what is the growth. The freedom is when both the sides are available. Light and darkness, both these things are available, then you choose on the right side. That's what is the spiritual growth. Like the way that a stone is there, you tell the stone don't move, the stone anyway does not move, because stone does not have the freedom to move or not to move. Whereas if you tell your dog, a pet dog, sit down, quiet, don't move, that means to say now you have mastery over the dog, because the dog has a possibility to move or not to move. Same way that your mind has a possibility to think and not to think, go around and not to go around. Both these things are possible. Then when you really make the mind quiet, that is what is the spiritual growth. Same way when you have total freedom, complete freedom to do or not to do. Activity and non-activity, both the freedom is there to you, absolute total freedom. At the same time when you don't do an activity, that's what is real non-activity. It is not laziness. Laziness is slowly that we are de-identifying ourselves with this freedom, which is supposed to be the consciousness, and getting back to the state of dullness, getting back to the state of tamas, non-activity. And this is laziness. And this stupor state is not the question of non-activity. In fact, if non-activity is of that nature, then we don't have to do all these things. We can just take some drug or some marijuana, some effect from some chemical from outside, and then stay without doing any activity. In fact, a lot of people did this mistake in the spirituality, that they take all these drugs and all those things. That's what is the idea. That's the reason why the Swamachara techniques, that's what is Tantric techniques, have become unpopular because of this reason. Because they think that the non-activity is important, and non-activity they have mistake the laziness, slumberness, stupidity, stupor state, they have mistaken to be non-activity, and they use the drugs and drinks and all that to go to that particular state, thinking that they are spiritual. This is not spirituality. And that's only basically that you lose the touch with your consciousness. If you really truly understand what is called as non-activity, then these are not the techniques by which that you go to the non-activity, but you are ready to do any activity, but you are still, you are quiet. You are not moving any activity. You are totally having control over yourself, mastery over yourself. This is what essentially the karma, akarma. Akarma practice is very deep, deep inside. Now what normally we see akarma is what is shown in the world outside. You manifestation in the world outside, that's what you see, and akarma. Outside there may be quietude, but inside the whole volcano may be going on. And this volcano that is going on inside can create a lot of havoc within you. And such person, when he controls himself from doing an activity manifesting outside, but still he has not entered into the non-activity, akarma, such a person is a person, either he suppresses all the activity and it can manifest in the form of various psychosomatic ailments, or it can also create in the form of negativity in your mind, and then there is any activity that is going on, and then that activity is, you start blaming that other person outside, saying that, look at that person, he does this, he does that, he don't have any control, he's so hyperactive, he's always talking. You find fault with the others for the simple reason that what you have is something which you suppress. It is what is reflected in the world outside, in the world that you keep seeing that. A person who really grows into the spiritual dimensions of this non-activity is a person for whom that activity outside does not disturb him. When does the activity outside disturb you? Is when you are apparently in the case of non-activity, but any small little activity is going to disturb you outside. It is then you show that it is that activity of yours is not coming from the non-activity. That means to say, essentially, where a genuine akarma is there, from there a genuine karma comes out. Where genuine natural state of akarma is there, from there a natural genuine karma comes out. Where the pseudo akarma is there, where a brought about akarma is there, where an akarma which is rejecting the karma that is there, in such a state of non-activity, only reaction comes out. Such a person who is peaceful is not truly peaceful. Only thing is that every activity that comes out is like a reaction that comes out. That's why people who are normally peaceful, genuinely peaceful, quiet inside, if there is some sound occurs outside, it does not disturb them. There is no reaction that comes outside. Alright, I'm quiet, we are all quiet. Suddenly some phone rings. Okay, by mistake somebody has kept his phone on and then it rang. It should not create any ripple in you, because the action should not come out like a reaction. Whereas somebody whose quietude is not the original quietude, it is not something which is natural, spontaneous quietude. A small little sound comes outside, immediately you react to that. You say, what is this? It looks like as if it is disturbing whole piece of yours. That kind of a fragile non-activity is not the spiritual way. A non-activity is something which is the ocean, depth of the ocean. And from there, all these things do not disturb. The dad is doing meditation in the next room, and dad doing meditation is a big thing. And the children make noise. It is the mother's responsibility to take care of the children. So she keeps the children in the other room. But then says that, look, don't make noise for next 1 hour. Dad is meditating, quiet and all that. It's so difficult, particularly if 2 children are there. Now, the little fellow says, okay, I do my homework. Wow, she was so surprised. This fellow has become so cooperative, and she was full of happiness. She said, wow, you are a great boy. Do your homework, okay? That will be very nice. If you want any help, I can do it. Then he says, okay, I will do math homework. Then mother says, okay, do math homework. You are a good boy. I said, but math book is in the other room. Now he has a law point. Let me go and pick up that. No, you don't go. Because if you go there, you create a havoc there. No, you just sit down, close your eyes and all that. Let me go and pick up your math book. And then she goes and opens the door quietly. You know, these door hinges, when you open them casually, they don't make noise. When you take all the care and open the door, it makes noise. And the husband fellow who is sitting meditating, and he looks at this as if he is waiting for that noise to happen. that means your meditation, your quietude is not the true quietude. A real non-activity is that you are sitting in the market and the whole activity is going on outside, but you are truly peace from within. The peace, that quietude, non-activity, is right from the seed up to the outside. It has to manifest. That's what is the non-activity. So when we are trying to do the non-activity, we go to that state. Patanjali in the first chapter of Yoga Sutra, the last sutra, 53rd sutra, he brings about this point, saying that even the activity of the bija type, of the seed type, you have to eliminate that. That's what is the purpose of samadhipada. That's what is the purpose of quietude. Samadhana, quietude is, I'm really peaceful. I'm totally peaceful. There is not an iota of an activity there in the deep inside. But the activity comes from that point of time, then truly I am acting. Such an activity where it comes from that peace, it belongs to that peace. The activity does not belong to you. The activity belongs to the peace. Whereas an activity which does not belong to the deep inside, that quietude, an activity belongs to the reaction from the world outside. It is the ego. It is the ahankara. An activity which becomes our ahankara is an activity which is not true activity, but it is reactivity or the response that we are giving to the world outside. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Kim karma, kim karmeti. What is activity? What is non-activity? It is so deep in its philosophy. Kavayopyatra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshami. I am going to tell you that. Why he has to tell that to Arjuna? Because here Arjuna's idea of running away from the battlefield, resorting to the state of non-activity, it is not truly non-active, but it is in the form of sympathy. This is the difference. A compassion is from deep inside spiritual. A sympathy is for the world outside. Arjuna's activity, Arjuna's idea of non-activity is not really truly non-activity, and it is born out of the impulsive activity that is going on, and there is ego behind it. That's what Krishna gives that education to Arjuna. True akarma, if it had been there, I wouldn't have objected to you. But your akarma is a pseudo akarma. Better than that is you get into the work. That's what is the way that Krishna addresses this issue.